Good day, class. Welcome to the Law on Private Corporations. We will now be discussing Title 1, the General Provisions. So first, let's talk about the history of corporation law in the Philippines. So the basis of corporation law before 2019 was the old Corporation Code. It's Batas Pambansa Bilang 68. It took effect on May 1, 1980. Just recently, class, no? Hindi pa updated yung mga libro nyo. Congress passed the revised Corporation Code or Republic Act number 11232. It took effect on February 23, 2019. Up to the time of making this video, many commentaries, many books have not yet been updated. But what are the differences from between the revised Corporation Code and the old Corporation Code? Ang mga pinaka-importanting differences dun sa dalawa, itong mga to. Under the revised Corporation Code, meron ng one-man corporation. Anong sabihin yan? Kahit isang tao, class, kahit isang tao lang, pwede mag-incorporate. A corporation can consist of only one shareholder. Pwede na ngayon yun. Before class, before the revised Corporation Code, ilan ba dapat yung incorporators? It should not be less than 5, but not more than 15. Ngayon, iba na. There can be just one incorporator up to a maximum of 15. Alright? So, pwede na ang one-man corporation. So, what's another change? There's the removal of the 50-year limit rule. Corporations now can have perpetual existence unless limited in the Articles of Incorporation. Before the revised Corporation Code, lahat ng corporations, ang maximum life niyan hanggang 50 years lang. Before kasi ang ginagawa, if the corporation wishes to extend its life, magbobotohan, i-amend yung Articles of Incorporation. Pero now, class, a corporation can have a perpetual existence. Alright? It's been perpetual, hindi forever, forever perpetual existence under the revised Corporation Code. Tinanggal na yung limit ng 50 years. Isa pang significant change, the treasurer's affidavit is no longer required for incorporation. Before class, before ka mabigyan ng certificate of incorporation, aside from the Articles of Incorporation, you need to submit a treasurer's affidavit. Ang sinasabi sa treasurer's affidavit, yung bayad na, yung 25% of subscribed capital, So ang kailangan kasi class before, under the revised corporation, under the old corporation code, dapat 25% of the authorized capital stock should have been subscribed, and 25% of that subscribed number should have been paid. Yan class, wala nang ganun. Wala nang ganung requirement, wala nang minimum capital requirement, Hindi na rin kailangan yung treasurer's affidavit. There's no longer any minimum subscribed and paid up capital. And there is no more minimum capital requirement of 5,000 pesos. So actually, under the revised Corporation Code, para mas madali, mas pinapadali ang incorporation. Tapos, pinayagan pa yung one-man corporation. So these are the salient changes under the revised Corporation Code. Marami pa, Pero medyo pang advanced na yon. For your class purposes, we're just dealing with the basics. So what is the scope of the Corporation Code? Number 1, the incorporation, organization, and registration of private corporations, both stock and non-stock, including educational and religious corporations. We will be dealing with the stock and non-stock corporations later. Number 2, definition of the powers and provision for dissolution of a corporation. Number 3, the duties and liabilities of directors or trustees and other officers. Number 4, the declaration of the rights and liabilities of stockholders or members. Number 5, prescription of the conditions under which corporations, including foreign corporations, may transact business. Number 6, provision of the penalties for violation of the code. Number 7, repeal of all laws and parts of laws in conflict and inconsistent with the code. So what is a corporation class? A corporation is an artificial being created by operation of law, having the right of succession and the powers, attributes, and properties expressly authorized by law or incident to its existence. So this is the statutory definition of a corporation. We'll be discussing about the details later on. So the statutory definition refers only to private corporations or to corporations organized under the corporation code. Pag sinabing ganito class, ito yung mga in-incorporate under the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. No? So this is the primary government entity that deals with the incorporation of corporations. All right, so it's the SEC. Then class ng Congress. Congress may enact laws creating government-owned and controlled corporations. Also, a municipal corporation also refers to a local government unit such as Lucena City. So class, pag sinabing corporation, no, it's either it's organized under the Securities and Exchange Commission or it's created by law. Pero class mga mga corporations na created by law. Ano example niyan? Nandiyan yung PAGCOR. Nandiyan yung Manila International Airport Authority. Those corporations are not created under the SEC. Those corporations are created under Congress. So merong batas mismo, batas galing sa Congress na nag-create sa offices na yon, nag-create sa corporations na yon. One good example is PAGCOR. Alright? Tapos class, pag sinabing municipal corporation, ito yung mga LGU. Sino ba ang gumawa ng municipal corporation? Congress din. Those are created by law. So what are the attributes of a corporation? Number 1, it is an artificial being. Ibig sabihin artificial class. No? So it's not natural, no? It's artificial, it's man-made. It's man who creates a corporation. Number 2, it is created by operation of law because unlike partnership, a corporation cannot exist without operation of law. Pag sinabing operation of law, pwedeng ito yung either create ito ng Congress or either in-incorporate ito under SEC, under the corporation code. So ito yung sabihin ng by operation of law. Hindi pwede magkaroon ng corporation na by agreement lamang. Sa partnership, pwede yon. By mere agreement of the parties, pwede magkaroon ng partnership. Ang corporation, hindi pwede. No? Bago ka magkaroon ng corporation, you as a private individual, kailangan bigyan ka ng certificate of incorporation. Plus, take note, certificate of incorporation, yung kailangan ibigay sa'yo ng SEC bago ka magkaroon ng corporation. Number 3, it has the right of succession. Ibig sabihin, kahit mamatay yung mga stockholders, kahit mamatay yung mga members ng board of directors, tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang corporation. Unlike sa partnership class, no? Pag sa partnership, pag may napatay ng partner, basta may change sa relation ng partner, wala, dissolve na yung partnership. Pero pagdating sa corporation, yung mga stockholders mismo pwede na ibenta yung mga shares nila na hindi naapektuhan yung corporation mismo. Ako class, I'm a stockholder of several companies in the Philippines, no? Pero tuloy pa rin yung companies na na pinag-investan ko. So regardless whether the stockholders perish or not, no? Tuloy pa rin yung corporation. Kapag sole proprietorship class, no? Pag let's say yung sole proprietor namatay, may nangyari sa kanya. Pag namatay yun, tama naman, tuloy naman yung business, pero who now has the ownership? Alright? So pag-aawayan pa yan ng mga anak, no? Pagmamanahan pa yan. Pag corporation class, tuloy-tuloy lang ang corporation. Pag namatay yung mga stockholders, edi mamanahin ng mga ano, ng mga heirs ng stockholders yung mga shares nila. It's as if walang mangyayari, ano? Parang tuloy pa rin yung corporation. Number 4, it has only the powers, attributes, and properties expressly authorized by law or incident to its existence. Ngayon class, no, pag corporation, nakalagay sa articles of incorporation yan, merong primary purpose and secondary purposes. Ibig sabihin, yun lang ang pwedeng i-exercise ng corporation. For example, ang business ng corporation mo is consumer trading, no? Let's say meron kang merchandise store, no? Nasa primary purpose mo, nagbebenta ka ng mga retail goods, etc., etc. Pwede ka ba mag-manufacture ng goods? The answer is no, because it's not in your purposes. All right? You can only exercise, kung corporation ka, you can only exercise the powers, attributes, and properties expressly authorized by law or incident to its existence, no? So kung ano yung nasa primary purpose and secondary purpose, yun lang ang pwede gawin ng corporation. So corporation is an artificial personality. Corporation is a legal or juridical person with a personality separate and apart from its stockholders or shareholders. Class, by the way, no, huwag kayong malilito sa stockholders at saka sa shareholders. Magkapareho lang yan. Alright? Before kasi, like, before the year 2000s, talagang stockholders ang tawag. Ngayon kasi, parang ginawang international standard na shareholders ang tatawagin. Alright? So it's only a matter of terminology. So stockholders at saka shareholders, they are exactly the same. So for stock corporations, no, yun stockholders or shareholders for stock corporations. Kapag non-stock corporations naman, they are composed of members. For example, ng mga non-stock corporations, yung Rotary Club or Rotaract Club, yun yung, o kaya Habitat for Humanity, etc. No? Ang purpose ng non-stock corporation is not for profit, but it's for an advocacy, it's for public welfare, etc. Pag stock corporation ka, your primary purpose is to earn profit. So ito pa, not in fact and reality a person, but the law treats it as a person. Ibig sabihin yung corporation mismo, pwede mag-file ng kaso yan. Pwede rin siya kasuhan. O pwede rin siya mag-own ng properties. The stockholders or members compose the corporation, but they are not the corporation. So that's very important, no? Kasi the corporation is a separate entity from the stockholders. The debts of the corporation are not the debts of the shareholders or members. So medyo similar sa partnership class, no? Ang utang ng partnership ay hindi utang ng partners. Pero paano kung nalugi yung partnership? Pwede ba habulin yung partners? Yes. The answer is yes, pwede. Pwede habulin yung partners. The partners are subsidiarily liable. Sabihin, pag hindi nakabayad yung partnership, ang magkabayad yung partners. Pag sa corporation naman, iba yung utang ng corporation sa utang ng mga stockholders. Paano kung hindi makapagbayad yung corporation? Pwede ba habulin ng creditors ang stockholders? The answer is no. Alright? The answer is no. At the most, hanggang investment lang ng stockholders nila yung pwede mahabol ng creditors. But the creditors cannot go after the separate properties of the stockholders. Meron diyang exception class. We will discuss that later, no? Ang exception dyan, kapag i-apply yung doctrine of piercing the veil of corporate fiction. We will be discussing that in a little while, no? But the general rule is, hindi pwedeng habulin ng creditors ng corporation ang stockholders for their separate properties. Yan ang malaking pagkakaiba ng corporation sa partnership. So liability for debt, ownership of credit. The stockholder's debt or credit is not the debt or credit of the corporation. When it comes to right to bring actions, a corporation may incur obligations and bring civil and criminal actions in its own name in the same manner as a natural person. A corporation has no personality to bring an action for and in behalf of its stockholders for the purpose of recovering property which belongs to the stockholders in their personal capacities and vice versa. So talagang hiwala yung stockholders sa corporation. Right to acquire and possess property. Property conveyed to or acquired by the corporation is the property of the corporation and not of the stockholders, and thus may not be sold without express authorization of the board of directors or trustees. Okay, so nakita natin yung board of directors class, no? Ang board of directors, ito yung nagmamanage ng corporation. Lahat ng corporation class merong board of directors. Alright? So, sino ba nag-elect sa board of directors? Medyo talunan natin ng konti. Nag-elect sa board of directors, ito yung mga stockholders. Alright? Tapos yung mga board of directors, yung nasa board of directors, sila yung nag-elect ng officers. Liability for contracts. All contracts entered into in the name of the corporation by its regular appointed officers and agents are the contracts of the corporation and not those of the stockholders or members. Tax exemption liability. A tax exemption granted to a corporation cannot be extended to include the dividends paid by such corporation to its stockholders. The tax liability of a corporation cannot be enforced against the stockholders. So class I also teach taxation law, no? Pag nagbibigay ng dividends ang corporation sa stockholders, ano ba ang dividends class, no? Ang dividends, ito yung share ng income na binibigay sa stockholders. O class, syempre meron ganyan, no? Hindi ka naman mag-invest sa corporation, hindi ka magbibigay ng pera sa corporation unless wala kang kikitain, syempre. Paano ba kumikita class kapag nag-invest ka ng shares sa corporation? O dalawang bagay para mag-earn ka. Pwede ka bumili ng shares ngayon, tapos in the future, pwedeng tumaas ang presyo ng share. Saka mo siya ibebenta, doon ka kikita. Isa pa class, no? Let's say you're a passive investor. Gusto mo lang ini-invest mo yung pera mo, bibili ka ng shares. Pwede ka mag-intay ng dividends. Ang dividends class, dinedeclare ito ng board of directors as the share of income of the stockholders. Okay? So, kung nag-invest ka sa Jollibee, sa JFC, no? JFC is Jollibee Foods Corporation. Nagbibigay ang Jollibee ng dividends twice a year. Alright? So, depende kung marami kang shares, mas malaki ang dividends mo. Kung konti ang shares mo, mas konti ang dividends mo. So, bibigyan ka ng dividends depending on your number of shares. Alright? Malaki ba ang dividends? Well, it depends class, no? Ang dividends, mabibigay lang yan when there is a declaration by the board of directors. Kung walang declaration ng board of directors, wala kang dividends. Okay? Tapos kapag ang dividends class, binibigay sa individual stockholders, meron yung bawas na 10% withholding tax. So parang ano, no? Parang let's say may deposit ka sa bangko, tapos nag-earn ka ng interest income. Bago mo ma-enjoy yung interest income, binawasan na yan ng bangko. Binawasan niya ng bangko ng final withholding taxes of 20%. Alright? But that's passive income, no? So okay lang naman. So dito sa dividends naman, may bawas yung na 10% final withholding tax bago mabigay sa stockholders. Changes in individual membership. A corporation remains unchanged and unaffected by changes in its individual membership. It has continuous existence since it would exist even if all the stockholders die. Alright? So talagang may succession ng corporations. Number 7, liability under special circumstances. Personal or solidary liability may be incurred by corporate agents acting in behalf of the corporation when exceptional circumstances warrant. Personal liability may attach when the director or trustee or officer acted maliciously or in bad faith, or with gross negligence, or when it is proven that the officer has used the fiction of separate corporate personality to defraud a third party or for wrongful ends. Alright? So class, i-discuss natin itong fiction of separate corporate personality in the next few slides. Alright? So lagi itong maririnig, no, yung doctrine of piercing the veil of corporate fiction. Kahit sa bar exam, no, mahilig na tanong yan. Medyo gasgas na tanong yan sa bar exam on corporation law. By the way, sabihin ko na lang, no, ang corporation law, this is a big chunk under mercantile law. Alright? Ang partnership class, ang partnership, under yan ang civil code. So it's under civil law. Ang corporation, under mercantile law. So makiwalay na subject to sa bar exam. No? In case some of you will decide to go to law school in the future. So this regarding the fiction of corporate entity. When the fiction of corporate entity is being used as a cloak or cover for fraud or illegality, the fiction of corporate entity will be disregarded and the individuals composing it will be treated as identical with the corporation or merely as an association of individuals undertaking certain activities as a group, although no corporation has been formed. So class, let's remember our general rule. Ang general rule natin, no, ang utang ng corporation ay hindi utang ng stockholders. Ang liabilities ng corporation ay hindi liability ng stockholders. But there is an exception to that. The exception is itong doctrine of piercing the veil of corporate entity. So ito yung mga circumstances kung kailan siya pwede gawin. The law will not recognize separate corporate existence when it is clearly established that it is used as a shield for wrongdoing. So class, na for example, nagtayo ka ng corporation para manloko ng tao. Let's say nag-e-estafa ka na. Let's say nagbebenta ka, gumawa ka ng corporation, tapos yung corporation, nagbebenta ka ng mga fraudulent products or mga illegal products, no? Tapos let's say, kapag hinuhuli ni corporation, tapos hinuhuli ka, hindi mo pwedeng gawing defense na, teka, corporation dapat ang singilin mo, hindi ako. Hindi pwede yung class kasi naloloko ka na. You're using the corporation as a shield for fraud. So pag ganyan class, pwede dyan habulin ng stockholders. Pag ginagamit mo yung corporation sa panloloko. Okay? But of course, class, only the courts can declare that. Only the courts can declare, can apply the doctrine of piercing the veil of corporate entity. So in this case, class, no, the creditors will be able to go after the assets of the individual shareholders. No? The creditors will be able to go after the assets of the individual shareholders. Malitong creditors, sorry. No? So pwede habulin yung shares ng individual shareholders. Okay? So that is the exception to the general rule. So what are the instances where the fiction is disregarded? Number one, where a corporation functions for the benefit of a single person. But last, no? Ito yung nasa libro. Ito yung nasa outdated na libro. Pero ngayon kasi, meron ng one-person corporation. So this is actually moot already. Hindi na to applicable. No? Kaya na class, kaya mahirap mag-update ng libro ngayon kasi ang pinagkukunan din ng batas natin ay jurisprudence. Ano ba jurisprudence? Ito yung mga court decisions ng Supreme Court. Eh dahil bago pa yung batas, wala pa masyadong jurisprudence. Kasi ang jurisprudence class, no, yung mga decisions ng Supreme Court, they are also good as law, no? So parang sinusundan din siya. It is binding. So pwede mo yung gamitin arguments sa court yung mga jurisprudence alongside with the law itself. Number two, where the corporation is a mere instrumentality of the individual stockholders. So making the stockholders individually answer for corporate obligations. The corporate entity cannot be invoked or used for purposes that could not have been intended by the law that created the separate personality. So class, na pag yung corporation is talagang instrumentality lang ng individual stockholders, no? But of course, this is very hard to prove. Kasi in the first place talaga, mahirap talaga tanggalin, mahirap labanan yung general rule na hiwalay talaga yung stockholders sa corporation, no? So this number 2 is actually very hard to prove. Number 3, where the Philippine corporation is controlled by aliens. The nationality of the corporation shall be deemed that of the controlling stockholders during wartime or for reasons of national security. This is the control test in determining the nationality of a private corporation. Alright? So class, merong mga merong mga corporations na dapat controlled talaga by Filipinos. Ito yung mga nasa public utilities. Pag sinabi natin controlled by Filipinos, dapat 60% or more of the stockholders dapat ay Filipino citizens. Meron din corporations class, no? Na dapat 100% owned by Filipinos. But aliens, even alien, no, yung mga foreign citizens, they can actually buy shares also in the Philippines. Number 4, where a corporation is organized by an insolvent debtor to defraud his creditors. When the insolvent debtor transfers his or her properties to a corporation he or she organized to defraud his or her creditors. O for example, class, ako marami akong utang. Tapos, hindi ako makabayad, no? So alam ko na ang gagawin ng mga creditors, pag hindi ako makabayad, i-attach yung mga properties ko. So we learned in Oblico na pag in-attach yung properties ko, ibig sabihin nun, ibebenta yung mga properties ko. Ipo-public auction, ipo-public sale. For public sale yung properties ko, tapos yung proceeds nun ay i-apply sa mga utang ko. Ang ginawa ko class, no, natutunan ko sa corporation law na pwede ako gumawa ng corporation. Tapos yung corporation, separate entity for myself, no? So ang ginawa ko, gumawa ko ng corporation. Tapos lahat ng assets ko, nilipat ko sa corporation na 'yon. Tapos kaya nagtataka yung mga creditors kung bakit wala na makuha sa akin. Ngayon class, pwede na habulin yung corporation. They can apply the doctrine of piercing the veil, no? They can apply to the court, they can petition the court to apply the doctrine of piercing the veil of corporate fiction. Kasi parang niloloko ko lang sila. So class, natandaan nyo, lagi merong element of fraud, no? When it comes to piercing the veil of corporate fiction. Meron palaging panloloko. So yung number 4, yan, parang panloloko yan. Parang pinapamukha ako na wala akong assets kasi yung pala, nilipat ko lang sa corporation which I created solely for that purpose. So pag yun, pwede habulin yun. Number 5, where a subsidiary company is created by a parent company merely as an instrumentality, conduit, or agency of the latter. So, ano bang senyales ito, no? If the stockholders or officers of the two corporations are substantially the same or their system of operations is unified. So, ano ba subsidiary company? Ano ba parent company? So, let's use examples, no? So, class, San Miguel Corporation is a parent company. Ang San Miguel Corporation, malalaman natin, no, ang dami niyang hinahawakang businesses. Meron niyang food production, meron niyang retail, meron niyang construction. Yung mga separate businesses na yung class, no, may kanya-kanyang corporation yan. And those corporations are subsidiaries of San Miguel Corporation. Meron San Miguel Infrastructure, merong Pure Foods. Pure Foods is under San Miguel. Mas meron pang Petron. Petron is also under San Miguel Corporation. So San Miguel Corporation is the holding company. Tapos hawak niya yung mga subsidiaries na yon, which are handling different businesses. Number 6, where a corporation is formed by a person for the purpose of evading his or her individual contract. So parang sa number 4 kanina. No? So parang gumawa ka ng corporation, tapos yun ang pinag-contract mo. Tapos ang purpose mo kasi doon ay para hindi ka maging liable. Ang intention mo pala is lokohin yung tao na kinontract mo. So yan, pwede ma-pierce yung veil dyan ng corporate fiction. Ano ba ang veil class, no? Alam sa mga wedding, di ba, merong veil. So para siyang headgear, parang helmet, parang gano'n, 'no? During medieval times merong veil na tinatawag. So tinatakpan, 'no, tinatakpan. So 'pag sinabing piercing the veil, so parang tinatanggal yung veil na yun. So parang ine-expose, kumbaga yung corporation kasi tinatago niya yung mga stockholders. So parang 'pag pinierce mo yung veil, parang binubuksan mo yung veil tapos ine-expose mo yung stockholders. So that's why it's called piercing the veil of corporate fiction. Number 7, where a corporation is dissolved and its assets are transferred to another corporation to avoid the financial liability of the first corporation. So both firms are owned and controlled by the same person. The second corporation should be considered a continuation and successor of the first entity. So corporation as a creation of law or by operation of law. The general rule is special authority or grant by the state is required, no? So dapat meron ka munang certificate of incorporation bago ka magkaroon ng corporation. Corporations cannot come into existence by mere agreement of the parties. A corporation is created either by a special law which directly creates the corporation or by means of incorporation through the SEC. So the exception here is corporations by prescription, such as the Roman Catholic Church. So class, no, kailan ba inenact yung Revised Corporation Code 2019? Kailan ba yung Old Corporation Code nasa 1980s, no? Kailan ba nagkaroon ng Roman Catholic Church sa Pilipinas, class? Si Magellan introduced Christianity in the Philippines, no? Sa Cebu nung 1521. All right? So kumbaga matagal na merong Catholic Church, Roman Catholic Church sa Pilipinas. Matagal na. All right? So pag ganun, class, kailangan mo ba nila ng incorporation? Hindi na. So pag ganun, class, no, ang sinasabi dito, dahil sa sobrang tagal na, even before the enactment of the code, no, patagal nang merong Roman Catholic Church. The same goes for other religious denominations, other religious sects, no? So pag ganyan, corporation by prescription. All right? Usually ganyan yung mga religious organizations. Hindi lang Roman Catholic Church, no? Pati other religious organizations ganyan din. Dahil sa sobrang tagal na, parang corporation na rin sila. So right of succession of a corporation. A corporation has a capacity of continuous existence irrespective of the death, withdrawal, insolvency, or incapacity of the stockholders and regardless of the transfer of the shares of stock. Under the revised corporation code, a corporation shall have perpetual existence unless its articles of incorporation provides otherwise. The 50 years maximum rule no longer applies. So class, no? So ito yung malaking pagbabago under the revised corporation code. Wala nang limit na 50 years. Kung gusto ng mga incorporators na forever ang corporation, pwede yan. Before kasi 50 years yung maximum. Ngayon, hindi na ganyan. So powers, attributes, and properties of a corporation. A corporation may exercise only such powers as are granted by the law of its creation. All powers which may be implied from those expressly provided by law and those which are incidental or essential to the corporation's existence may also be exercised. So for example, kung ang business mo is retail of consumer goods, kasama rin ba doon yung pagbili ng lupa or pagrenta ng property para makapagtayo ka ng tindahan? Well, the answer is yes, because those powers are actually incidental to the primary purpose of selling consumer goods. Pero hindi ka pwede, let's say, hindi ka pwede mag-imbalsa mo. O malaking pagkakaiba naman yun, no? So what are the distinctions between a partnership and a corporation? So, ang partnership, it can be created by mere agreement of the parties. Consensual lang ang partnership. Ang corporation, it can only be created by law or by operation of law. O pag sinabing by operation of law, ito yung incorporation under the SEC. So partnership, it can be organized by 2 or more persons. Ang corporation class, it can be created by a single person. Yan yung tinatawag na one-person corporation. Up to a maximum of 15 incorporators. Before kasi class, under the old corporation code, dapat 5 to 15. Ngayon class, kahit isa okay lang. Tapos a maximum 15. Okay? Partnership commences to acquire juridical personality from the moment of execution of the contract of partnership. O ibig ba nito, dapat may kasulatan para magkaroon ng contract of partnership? Hindi kailangan ng kasulatan. Kahit oral, pwede. Or kahit nga implied, pwede. Basta malinaw yung intention ng mga parties. Sa corporation naman, it begins to have corporate existence and juridical personality from the issuance of the Certificate of Incorporation by the SEC. A partnership, it may exercise any power authorized by the partners, provided it is not contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, or public policy. So kahit ano, okay lang. Sa corporation, it can only exercise powers expressly granted by law or implied from those granted or incident to its existence. So ang pwede nang gawin ng corporation class, yung primary purpose niya at saka secondary purpose na nakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation. When the management is not agreed upon, every partner is an agent of the partnership. So class, na kung wala namang managing partner, lahat sa mga partners class, they can do acts of administration by themselves. They can transact business, etc. Ito class, no, sa corporation, the power to do business and manage its affairs is vested in the board of directors or trustees. Sila lang yung pwede mag-manage ng corporation. Ako class, no, I'm a stockholder of JFC, Jollibee Foods Corporation. Pwede ba pumunta sa Jollibee, sabihin ko, o dapat ganito yung style ng pagbebenta. Dapat ito lang binebenta nyo. Hindi pwede. No? Para magugulo lang ako doon. But I am a stockholder. But it does not mean that I am an agent of the corporation. Hindi ako pwedeng makialam sa affairs ng corporation. Because yung management niyan is under the members of the board of directors. Alright? Anong pwede ko gawin, class? Ang pwede ko gawin bilang stockholder, mag-elect ako ng members of the board of directors. But class, no? Ako ba mismo ang bumuboto? Do I attend every stockholders meeting? I do not. Alright? Kumbaga meron nagpo-proxy para sa akin. Kasi bumuli ako ng shares through a trading platform. By the way, class, no, encourage ko na kayo na mag-invest sa stocks habang bata pa kayo. Because your biggest resource right now is time. While you're in your 20s, or baka iba sa inyo, lower than 20 years old, the best time to invest is now, no, habang bata kayo. Because time is your biggest asset. In a partnership, a partner can sue a co-partner who manages. Sa corporation naman, the suit against a member of the board of directors or trustees who mismanages must be in the name of the corporation. Alright? It must be in the name, dapat yung corporation mismo yung yung magkakaso dun sa sa member of board of directors na nagloloko or nagme-mismanage. So a partnership has no right of succession. Pag may namatay sa isa sa partners, dissolve agad ang partnership. Ang corporation, it has the right of succession. Kahit pumatay yung stockholders, yung board of directors, tuloy pa rin ang corporation. Partnership, the general partners are liable personally and subsidiarily for partnership debts to third persons. So pag may utang yung partnership, tapos hindi makabayad yung partnership, magbabayad yung partners with their separate properties. Okay? So corporation naman, the stockholders are liable only to the extent of their investments. Alright? Let's say nalugi yung corporation, no? Ang pwede lang mahabol ng creditors dyan, yung extent ng investment mo. Yun lang. But beyond that, you're not liable. Unless, of course, i-apply yung piercing the veil of corporate fiction. But class, yun yung exception. So medyo mahirap yun. Kailangan pa ng court declaration nun. A partner cannot transfer his interest in the partnership so as to make the transferee a partner in the partnership. So class, we learned in the partnership law na yung partner, pwede niya i-assign yung partnership interest niya. Pero pag nag-assign ba siya ng partnership interest, yung pinag-assign ba niya, nagiging partner ba yun sa partnership? Hindi. Alright? Yung assignee, pwede rin niya makuha yung share sa profits, etc. Sa corporation naman, class, the stockholder has the right to transfer his shares to anyone without the prior consent of the other stockholders. Ako, class, yung shares ko, pwede ko ibenta kahit kanino anytime, anywhere. Pwede. Okay? A partnership may be dissolved at any time by the will of any or all of the partners. Okay? Basta may isang partner na umayaw, wala na, dissolve agad yung partnership. Of course, the partner has to act in good faith. No? But you learn that in your partnership law. Sa corporation naman, a corporation can only be dissolved with the consent of the state. Alright? May process ang dissolution ng corporation class. Sa partnership, a partnership is governed by the civil code. A corporation, it is now governed by the revised corporation code. So what are the similarities between a partnership and a corporation? So both a partnership and a corporation have a juridical personality separate and distinct from the individuals composing them. Both of them can only act through agents. So sa partnership, yung mga partners, yun ang agents ng partnership. Sa corporation naman, edi yung board of directors. Both distribute profits to those who contribute capital. So sa partnership class, no, merong partners share of the net income. Sa stockholders, sa corporation, ang mga stockholders, meron silang dividends, no? Kapag nagde-declare ng dividends ang board of directors. Paano kung walang declaration ng dividends ang board of directors? Hindi walang dividends, no? Kasi class, bakit hindi ba nagbibigay ng dividends ang corporation minsan? Kaya hindi sila nagbibigay ng dividends is for the growth of the corporation. Para sa business class, no? Pag nagtayo ka ba ng business, it's a matter of perspective, actually. Pag nagtayo ka ng business, gusto mo ba yung lumalago yung business mo? Yung kahit hindi ka kumuha ng profits ng business, kasi yung profits ng business, nire-reinvest mo lang dun sa business para lumago siya. So hindi mo na-enjoy yung profits, no? Parang kasi binabalik mo sa business para lumago, nag-expand ka, ganyan-ganyan. Meron namang mga business owners class na masaya na dun sa pwesto nila, tapos yung kinita nila for the day, kinukuha na nila. So it's a matter of perspective, no? So parang ganito rin. Pero mga corporations na malakas magbigay ng dividends. As merong corporation na ayaw masyado magbigay ng dividends for the growth of the corporation. Para yung pera sana, gagamitin na lang for expansion, etc. Kesa i-declare sa mga stockholders. So, balik tayo dito. Both are taxable. All partnerships, except for general professional partnerships, are subject to the regular corporate income tax rate. So, ang partnership class, no, ang regular partnership, it is taxed the same as a corporation. Ano ba ang tax rate ng corporation ngayon at saka partnership? The tax rate right now, no, it's 30%. Under the CREATE law, bababa pa yan, no? But right now, it's 30%, no? What are the advantages of a business corporation? It has continuity of existence because of its independence on those who compose it. Its credit is strengthened by such continuity of existence. Its management is centralized in the board of directors. Its creation, organization, management, and dissolution are standardized under the corporation code. It makes feasible big enterprises because it enables many people to invest their separate funds in the enterprise. So yun ang essence ng corporation class, no? Kailangan ng corporation ng funding. So ano gagawin niya? Ibebenta niya yung mga shares niya sa mga tao. Alright? Para magkaroon ng funding ng corporation. Paano pa magkakaroon ng funding ang isang corporation class? Ang corporation pwede rin namang umutang ng pera sa bangko. The same way, kapag magtatayo ka ng business, uutang ka ng pera sa bangko. Para ano? Para magkaroon ka ng capital. Now, a corporation class can also borrow money. Ano bang disadvantage ng paghiram ng pera, class? Pag humiram ka ng pera, syempre there's a risk. There's a risk na hindi mo mabayaran yung utang. Tapos kakainin ka na ng interest, ng penalties, etc. Ngayon naman, class, ng corporation, kung ayaw niya ng risk masyado, pwede siya magbenta ng shares. Alright? Para magkaroon ng funding. Mag-i-issue siya ng shares para magkaroon ng pera. That's one way of building up a corporation's capital. So isa pa, no? Isa pang advantage, the shareholders have limited liability. So ito ang gusto ng mga investors. Gusto na mag-invest ng pera nila pero ayaw nila na habulin sila pagkatapos ng creditors ng corporation. The shares of stock can be transferred without the consent of the other stockholders. So ito maganda rin yan. Let's say tumaas na yung presyo ng stock, no? Kasi ang presyo, class, ng stock ng company tumataas, bumababa, no? Let's say kung pangit yung outlook ng company, bababa ang presyo niyan. Kasi ang tingin ng tao malulugi, yun ang perception ng mga tao. Pero kung ang tingin ng mga tao malakas yung company, as in marami siyang bagong products, marami siyang innovations, tataas ang presyo niyan. Okay? So it's actually good to invest in stocks, no? Syempre, only invest in companies na alam mong malakas talaga. Or yung alam mong may potential for growth. Bigyan ko yung example, class, no? Kapag bumili ka ng 100,000 pesos worth of share sa DMCI, DMCI is a construction corporation, no? Ang worth niya ngayon nasa 14 to 15 million if I'm not mistaken. So ganun kalaki. Ganun kalaki yung potential. But of course, meron din nalulugi sa stocks, no? So you have to it's actually a calculated risk. You have to study it. So what are the disadvantages of a business corporation? It's a relatively complicated in formation and management. Kapag magtatayo ka ng business, class, no? Let's say sole proprietorship o kaya partnership, ano ba ang kailangan mo? DTI, BAR registration, ganyan-ganyan. Pag sa corporation class, you have to go through SEC. So it's relatively complicated. Kaya tinawag na relatively kasi depende 'yon sa Depende sa perspective mo. Kasi it's only a process, pero kumbaga mas mahirap siya compared sa partnership at saka sa sole proprietorship. Isa pang disadvantage, there is relatively high cost of formation and operation. Kapag corporation ka, class, no, maraming kang fina-file ng mga income tax returns. No, tapos maraming compliance requirements. There is a greater degree of governmental control and supervision. So lalo na if you're in the business, kung ang corporation is in the business affecting the environment, mas binabantayan yan ng government agencies like DNR o iba pang government offices, no? The stockholders' voting rights have become theoretical because of the use of proxies and widespread ownership. So class, no, may voting rights nga ang mga stocks, no? But in reality, ang bumoboto niyan yung mga proxies na lang. Ako, I don't particularly vote, no? Pero mga proxies. The stockholders have little voice in the conduct of the business. So, so ang shareholders, ang pwede lang nila gawin is to vote for the members of the board of directors who will manage the corporation. Pero yung mga stockholders mismo, wala silang say kung paano yung patakbo ng business. Kung paano yung patakbo ng business ng corporation. So what are the classifications of corporations? We have a stock corporation. The ordinary business corporation created and operated for the purpose of making a profit. Such profit may be distributed in the form of dividends to stockholders on the basis of their invested capital. Dividends may be in the form of money, property, or additional stock. So ito yung cash dividend, property dividend, o kaya stock dividend. A non-stock corporation naman, it is not created for profit. It does not issue stock. Its purpose is for the public good and welfare. The capital is sourced from contributions and donations. Other classifications of corporations, number one, as to the state or country under or by whose laws they have been created. The domestic corporation. This is a corporation incorporated under the laws of the Philippines. A foreign corporation, this is formed, organized, or existing under any laws other than those of the Philippines. So let's say yung corporation ginawa sa Amerika, hindi sa Amerika. Corporation ginawa sa China, hindi sa China. Pwede ba, class, no? Pwede ba mag-business ang foreign corporations sa Philippines? The answer is yes, pwede. But they need to apply for a license. Mag-apply dapat sila ng license sa SEC. Alright? Hindi pwedeng basta-basta maggagawa ng business dito sa Philippines. Kailangan ng license. As to the legal right to corporate existence, the jure corporation, this is a corporation existing in fact and in law. Alright? Sabihin, kompleto sa requirements. Merong certificate of incorporation, etc., etc. Ang de facto corporation, a corporation existing in fact but not in law. Kasi merong kulang na requirements, ganyan-ganyan. Alright? So that's a de facto corporation. As to whether they are open to the public or not, closed corporation, one which is limited to selected persons or members of a family. May ganyang ang closed corporation class, no? Yan yung mga tipong maliliit na businesses na hindi nila binibenta yung shares nila sa ibang mga tao. Yan yung mga family corporations. Alright? Ang open corporation, it is open to any person who may wish to become a stockholder or member thereto. Isang example ng open corporation class, ito yung mga ang shares nila publicly listed. Ibig sabihin ng publicly listed, nasa stock exchange yung shares ng open corporation. Ibig sabihin kahit sino pwede bumili ng shares nila. Alright? Example ng open corporation, yan, JFC, Jollibee, no? San Miguel Corporation, Ayala Corporation. Alright? Ang closed corporation naman, wala to sa stock exchange. Ito yung mga negosyo ng mga pamilya, ng mga ganyan, na hindi nila binibenta yung shares nila sa ibang tao. Yun ang closed corporation. As to their relation to another corporation, no? So meron tayong parent company, or meron tayong parent or holding corporation. It holds most of the shares of another corporation. It has the power to either directly or indirectly elect the members of the board of directors of the subsidiary corporation. Ang corporation ba, class? Ang corporation ba, pwede ba ito humawak ng shares ng ibang corporation? Yes, pwede. Pwede yun. Hindi naman kailangan na ang stockholder ay natural person. Okay? So a corporation can actually be a stockholder of another corporation. That is allowed. Ang subsidiary corporation, most of its shares are held by the parent corporation or holding company. So isa example natin kanina, ang SMC, ang San Miguel Corporation, holding corporation siya, holding company. Ang mga subsidiaries niya yan, Pure Foods, merong Petron, tapos merong San Miguel Infrastructure. Alright? Marami pang corporations na hawak ang San Miguel Corporation. Number 5, as to whether they are for public or private purpose. Ang public corporations, these are formed or organized for the government of a portion of the state. Example ito class, no? Autonomous regions, provinces, cities, municipalities, and barangays. May tanong ko class, no? Ilan ba ang autonomous region natin sa Pilipinas? Ilan ang autonomous region? The answer is one. There's only one autonomous region. The common misconception class, dalawa ang autonomous region. Ano yung dalawa? Yung Cordillera Administrative Region at saka yung yung ARMM. But class, no, yung yung Cordillera Administrative Region, it is not an autonomous region. Bakit? Kasi meron bang CAR governor? Wala. Alright? It's only used for administrative purposes. Pero ang ARMM, ito yung sa Muslim Mindanao, no? Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. This is a separate local government unit. Pero ang tinatawag na ARMM governor. May sariling governor ang ARMM. Ang Cordillera Administrative Region, wala yung sariling governor. So there's only one autonomous region in the Philippines, and that is the ARMM. So private corporations, these are those formed for some private purpose, benefit, or end. Ito yung mga, ang purpose ito is for profit. Corporations created by special laws or charters. So these are corporations created by law, which is Congress, no? Such as PAGCOR, or Land Bank of the Philippines, etc. So class, no, ang Land Bank of the Philippines, it's created by law. So merong batas na gumawa ng Land Bank of the Philippines. Ang BPI ba, ginawa ba ito ng Congress? Hindi. Marami ba like BPI, BDO, lahat to, dumaan yan sa SEC. Pero ang Land Bank, hindi yan dumaan sa SEC. Ang Land Bank, create yan under special law. Kasi it's a government bank. Ang Land Bank, no? Ang PAGCOR naman, class, this is also created by law. Hindi ito dumaan sa SEC. So let's talk about capital stock and capital. So what is capital stock? Capital stock is the amount fixed in the articles of incorporation to be subscribed and paid in by the shareholders of a corporation. It limits the maximum amount of number of each class of shares that may be issued by the corporation without formal amendment of the articles of incorporation. Right? So ano bang authorized capital stock? If shares have par value, the authorized capital stock is the same as capital stock. If the shares have no par value, there is no authorized capital stock. There is only capital stock, which can only be determined when all the shares have been issued. Pag sinabi natin capital stock class, no? Ito yung nakalagay, ito yung determined sa ito yung maximum amount. Ito yung maximum amount na nakalagay sa articles of incorporation in case of par value shares, no? So isipin kapag yung shares may par value lahat, yung authorized capital stock, yung amount ito, the same as capital stock. Kumbaga ito yung maximum na sinet sa articles of incorporation. Pero kapag no par value shares, no, walang authorized capital stock. Ang magiging halaga ng capital stock is yung kapag na-issue na yung mga shares, no? Kapag na-issue na yung lahat ng shares kapag na-issue na lahat ng no par value shares, doon na-determine yung capital stock. Pero pag may par value yung shares, yung amount ng capital stock is the same as authorized capital stock. Yung authorized capital stock class, nakikita yan sa articles of incorporation. We will show a sample later on. Subscribed capital stock, this is the amount of capital stock subscribed, whether fully paid or not. It is acquisition by a subscriber of unissued shares of a corporation. Ito class sample ng authorized capital stock, no? Ito class, this is an excerpt of from an existing articles of incorporation. No? So basahin natin. That the authorized capital stock of the corporation is 100 million pesos in lawful money of the Philippines divided into yan. So class ito ano, kung mapapansin niyo, meron declaration ng sa Articles of Incorporation kung magkano yung authorized capital stock. Alright? Ibig sabihin nito, hindi pa siya nai-issue lahat. No? Hindi pa siya nai-issue lahat yung ano, hindi pa nai-issue lahat ng authorized capital stock na yan. Kumbaga, wala pang ganyang pera sa ngayon ang corporation. Kumbaga, ito yung ano, ito yung balak i-issue ng corporation. So 94 million ito no, so ito yung common shares na may par value ng 1 peso per share, no? So dito makikita niyo yung hatian, no, yung hatian ng mga shares. Tapos makikita niyo dito no, ang common shares, madali yung computation kasi piso lang per share yung par value. So divided into laki no, divided into 94 million shares, no? Tapos yung amount niya is 94 million plus pesos. Tapos merong mga preferred shares, no? Makikita rin dito yung par value niya. Alright, so lahat to class, no? This constitutes 100 million pesos. Ito yung authorized capital stock ng corporation. So nakalagay ito usually sa Articles of Incorporation, no? Yung authorized capital stock. So what is outstanding capital stock? This is the portion of the capital stock which has already been issued and held by persons other than the corporation itself. It is the total shares of stock issued to subscribers and stockholders except for treasury shares. So ang outstanding capital stock class, no? Ito yung na-issue na. So hawak na to ng shareholders. Alright? Binabawas dito yung treasury shares. We will be discussing treasury shares later on. Paid up capital, this is the portion of the subscribed or outstanding capital stock that is already paid. Unissued capital stock, this is the portion of the capital stock that is not issued or subscribed. It does not vote and draws no dividends kasi unissued pa. Hawak pa to ng corporation. Hindi pa ini-issue sa shareholders. Ang outstanding capital stock, ito yung mga shares na na-issue niya. Ito yung mga shares na na-issue na. Okay? Pero binabawas dito yung treasury shares kung meron man. So what is capital, class? So we differentiate capital stock from capital. Pag sinabing capital, it is the entire assets of the corporation. It includes the amount invested by the stockholders plus the undistributed earnings less losses and expenses. What is legal capital? It is the amount equal to the aggregate par value and or issued value of the outstanding capital stock. With regard to issuance of par value shares, share premium is not included in the computation of legal stock. In case of no par value shares, the entire consideration received forms part of legal capital. So class, kapag par value shares, yun lang yung amount lang ng par value shares, yun lang yung part ng legal capital. Hindi kasama yung share premium. Kasi class, pwede ba mag-issue ng more than the amount of par value? Yes, pwede. Yung excess nun is share premium, di ba? It still forms part of capital, but hindi siya kasama sa legal capital. What is a stock or share of stock? It's one of the units into which the capital stock is divided. It represents the interest or right which the owner has the right to vote in case of voting shares, the right to receive dividends declared by the BOD, by the Board of Directors, and the right in the remaining assets and properties upon liquidation of the corporation. So class, no, dyan papasok yung capitalism. No? Kung mas marami ka stock, no, let's say you own 60% of the stocks of the corporation, you have the controlling interest. No? So, ikaw, kahit mag-isang tao ka lang, pwede mo iboto kung sino yung mga members ng board of directors. Tapos, ikaw rin na may pinakamalaking dividends na matatanggap. No? Kaya kung konti lang naman yung shares mo, nakakaboto ko pa rin. Depende sa number na shares mo. Alright? Tapos meron ka ring right to receive dividends depending on your number of shares. Usually class, kung nagde-declare ng dividends ang board of directors, ang sinasabi nila 5 pesos per share, 10 pesos per share, minsan 200 pesos per share. So depende kung marami kang stocks, mas malaki dividends mo. Kung mas konti, edi mas konti. Nature of the share of stock. It represents a distinct share or interest in the common property of the corporation. A shareholder is not the owner of any of the property or assets of the corporation, nor is he or she entitled to the possession of any definite portion. Okay? So hindi porke shareholder ka, may karapatan ka dun sa mga assets ng corporation. Because those assets belong to the corporation. They do not belong to you. Ang share of stock, it is incorporeal in nature. Incorporeal kasi hindi mo siya nakikita. Nakikita mo ba ang shares of stocks? Hindi mo nakikita yan. It's incorporeal, it's also intangible. But it is considered personal property. It does not constitute an indebtedness of the corporation to the shareholder. No action can be maintained against the corporation for the return of the contributions of the shareholders. O tanda ko class, meron akong client na lumapit sa akin, no? May dala siyang certificate of stock galing sa company sa Lucena, no? Sa Lucena Corporation. May nakita siyang share of stock na nasa pangalan pa ng lolo niya, parang so ang tingin niya doon, akala niya pera, no? So akala niya ang pwede gawin, pumunta siya dun sa corporation para bayaran siya. Hindi pwedeng ganun class, hindi pwede 'yon. Alright? Hindi yan utang sa ng corporation. Ang share of stock, hindi yan utang ng corporation sa shareholder. Ano pwede niya gawin doon sa certificate of stock? O pwede niya ibenta. Pwede niya ibenta sa ibang tao. Doon siya magkakapera. Hindi yung pipilitin yung corporation na bilhin sa kanya yun. So I hope that's clear class, no? Kung may nakuha kayong certificate of stock, no? Hindi kayo pwedeng pumunta sa company para ipatubos yun or whatever. Pwede niyo ibenta yun. Or you can actually hold on to it. Ipa-transfer mo sa pangalan mo. Yun pwede gawin yun. It only represents an undivided part of the corporation's property. A certificate of stock is a formal written evidence of the holder's ownership of one or more shares of a corporation. It is a mere instrument for the transfer of title. So classes of shares. Par value share is a share with a specific money value fixed in the articles of incorporation for each share of stock of the same issue. The primary purpose is to fix the minimum issue price of the shares to assure the creditors that the corporation would receive a minimum amount of it to its stock. It is not usually the price at which investors buy or sell the stock. So class, no, kahit merong par value share, no? Ibig sabihin ng par value share, ng corporation, hindi siya pwede mag-issue below par value. Pwede siya mag-issue above par value, but not below par value. Pero pag nasa kamay na ng shareholders yung stock na yan, pwede na ibenta yan below par value class. Lalo na kung pangit yung corporation, no? Merong, let's say, ang par value niya is 10 pesos. Pero pag nasa market na, pwede yan ibenta ng, let's say, 50 cents lang or whatever, depende. Kasi ang corporation, pwede magkaroon ng profit, pwede rin yan malugi. Pag nalulugi yan, syempre bababa ang presyo niyan because it's not desirable. A no par value share, a share without any stated or par value appearing on the face of the certificate of stock. It is a stock which does not state how much money it represents. It has an issued value. The issued value is the consideration fixed by the corporation for its issuance. A corporation may issue no par value shares only or together with par value shares. No par value stockholders have the same rights as par value stockholders. So what is a voting share? It is a share with the right to vote. Common shares usually have the right to vote. Ang preferred shares usually wala. Representation in a corporation is commensurate to the extent of ownership of shares. So depende sa dami ng depende sa dami ng shares mo, no? Depende sa dami ng shares mo, ng voting shares mo, doon ka magkakaroon ng say sa corporation. Doon ka makapag-elect ng mga officers na gusto mo. Doon ka makapag-elect ng members ng board of directors na gusto mo. Pero kung maliit na shareholder ka lang, hindi wala masyado. But meron pa rin. Non-voting share. It's a share without the right to vote. No share may be deprived of voting rights except those classified and issued as preferred or redeemable shares. Pero class, no, kahit ang preferred shares, let's say preferred shareholder ka, wala kang voting privileges when it comes to electing the members of the board of directors. However, kahit preferred shareholder ka, pwede ka mag-vote sa ilang circumstances. Itong circumstances na to nasa section 6. Pero basahin na natin, no? Merong amendment of the Articles of Incorporation, adoption and amendment of bylaws, the sale, lease, exchange, mortgage, pledge, or other disposition of all. So class, highlight this, no? Of all or substantially all of the corporate property. So importante yung all or importante yung disposition of all or substantially all. Okay? Yung all or substantially all, importante yan. Kasi pag hindi naman, pag let's say konting property lang yung binebenta, hindi kailangan ng botohan dyan. Members of the board of directors lang ang pwede mag-ano dyan. Incurring, creating, or increasing bonded indebtedness, increase or decrease of authorized capital stock, merger or consolidation of the corporation with another corporation or other corporations, investment of corporate funds in another corporation or business, and dissolution of the corporation. Kung mapapansin nyo class, no, itong mga nasa section 6, medyo mabigat na decisions itong mga to. Alright? So, ibig sabihin yan, pati yung lahat ng shareholders, including the preferred shareholders, lahat sila pwedeng botohan to. Alright? Pag hindi sila sang-ayon, hindi pwede. So what is the nature of a par value, book value, market value? So pag sinabi natin par value per share, this is the one indicated in the certificate of stock. No? It represents the amount of money or property contributed by the shareholder to the capital stock of the corporation. Ang book value per share, it is the value of total corporate assets divided by the number of shares issued or outstanding. So class, magandang let's say bala ko mag-invest sa isang company, ano titignan mo? Syempre, hindi lang yung presyo. Alright? Titignan mo yung book value per share. Ang book value per share, ito yung total assets divided by the number of shares issued. Alright? Pag nalulugi na yung company, sabihin, maliit na ng book value per share niyan. Kasi maliit na yung assets niyan. Pero pag malakas yung company, malaki yung assets niyan. Alright? But you have to be careful din. What if malaki nga yung assets kasi marami siyang cash? Diba? Yung pala kaya maraming cash is kasi maraming utang. So you also have to be careful in that regard. Okay? A market value naman, this is the price a willing seller would sell and a willing buyer would buy. Itong price ng shares, no, makikita mo to sa stock exchange. So it's readily available sa stock exchange. Yung market value ng shares of stock. So what are the kinds of preferred shares? Number one, preferred share as to assets. It gives the holder preference in the distribution of assets of the corporation in case of liquidation. A preferred share as to dividends. It is entitled to receive dividends at fixed rates before any dividend is paid to common stockholders. So class, usually ang preferred shares na to, may makikita kayo, merong dividend rate, no? Merong dividend rate kasi sabihin, dapat Sila muna ang babayaran. Kaya tawag preferred eh. Sila muna yung babayaran bago yung remaining ay mabigay sa mga ordinary stockholders. Kaya preferred ang tawag sa kanya. Preferred sila when it comes to dividends. Pero when it comes to voting rights, wala masyadong ganyan ang preferred shares. Alright? So what are the limitations regarding the issuance of preferred shares? Preferred shares may be deprived of voting rights such as election of members of the board of directors, but they may still vote on matters enumerated in Section 6. Yung Section 6 yung kanina na sinabi natin. No? Preferred shares may be issued only with a stated par value. So what are the kinds of preferred shares as to dividends? Number one, cumulative preferred shares. It includes dividends in arrears. No? Ibig sabihin ng in arrears, hindi yung mga nakaraan. Kasama yon. If the stipulated dividend is not paid in a given year, kasi walang declaration ng board of directors, it will be added to the dividend which shall become due. Accumulated dividends must be paid to the holder of the preferred share before any dividend may be paid to the holders of the common stock. So klaseng sabihin, kasi magkakaroon lang naman ng dividends kapag nag-declare yung board of directors. Eh paano sa mga years na hindi nag-declare ang board of directors? Kapag cumulative preferred share, for example, 5 years na yung corporation, tapos mayroong preferred shares na 10% dividend rate, no? So sabihin yung for years, let's say so year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, walang declaration. Tapos sa year 5, nag-declare ng declaration ng dividends. Tapos cumulative preferred share yung hawak ng stockholder. So pati yung sa apat na taon, yung sa year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, pati yun, i-consider kasama sa computation yun. Pati yung mga years na yun, bibigyan. So pag ganun class, konti na lang matitira para sa ordinary stockholder. Pag non-cumulative preferred share naman, it entitles the holder to payment of current dividends only in preference to common stockholders. If dividends are not declared in a given year, the right to dividends for that particular year is extinguished. So balik tayo sa example, no? So sa year 5 lang, nag-declare ng dividends sa corporation. Yung dividends, so walang dividends para sa year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. So wala para doon. Para sa year 5 lang. Yun kapag non-cumulative preferred share. Kapag cumulative preferred share, kasama yung sa mga prior years na hindi nakapag-declare. So madali lang, no? Madali lang yung cumulative share at saka non-cumulative share. Yun lang yung sabihin nun. Medyo complex yung participating share. No? I'm sure you also learned this in your accounting for partnerships and corporations. A participating preferred share, the holder of the preferred share is also able to participate with the holders of common shares in the remaining profits pro rata after the common shares have been paid the amount of the stipulated dividend at the same preferred rate. Alright, so ibig sabihin, so bibigyan muna ng percentage yung mga preferred stockholders. Tapos yung mga ordinary stockholders class, bibigyan mo rin ng share based dun sa percentage ng preferred share. Depende dun sa percent ng preferred share. Tapos pag may matitira pa, yung natitirang yon, ibibigay ulit yon sa preferred shares, no? So sobrang lugi dito yung ordinary shares. O depende sa perspective, no? Pag non-participating preferred share naman, it entitles the holder to receive the stipulated preferred dividends and no more. The rest goes to the common stockholders. So class, no? So depende, no? Depende sa number na shares mo. Doon ka pwede mag-earn na malaki. Kung marami kang shares, doon ka mag-earn na malaki. So mag-apply ka dito ng ratio and proportion. In the absence of any agreement, dividends are deemed non-cumulative and non-participating. So mas madali, no? Pag non-cumulative and non-participating. Madali lang siya i-compute. Medyo complex lang itong participating preferred share. Kasi bibigyan mo yung preferred shares, tapos bibigyan mo naman yung ordinary shareholders, tapos kapag may matitira, mag-share pa yung preferred shareholders doon. What are redeemable shares? A share which is usually a preferred share, which is redeemable at a fixed date or at the option of either the issuing corporation or the stockholder, or both at a certain redemption price. What is redemption? It is the repurchase rather, or the acquisition of stock by a corporation which issued the stock for cash or property. Redeemable shares may be issued only when expressly so provided in the articles of incorporation. Common shares are never redeemed. So what are treasury shares? These are shares which have been issued to stockholders and fully paid for and later reacquired by the corporation by purchase, redemption, donation, or other lawful means. So class, ito yung no? Ito yung parang na-issue na. So hawak na ng stockholder. Kasi yung stockholder na yon, nag-subscribe siya ng shares. So yung corporation, binigay sa kanya yung shares. Eh ngayon naman class, yung stockholder, hindi na binabayaran yung subscribed shares niya. Ano pwede gawin ng corporation? Kasi pag meron delinquent stock, no? Pag meron delinquent stock, ibibid yan ng mga tao. Pag meron delinquent stock. Yung isip ng delinquent, hindi binabayaran yung subscription. No? Ang pwede gawin ng corporation, pwede yung corporation mismo ang bumili. Pwede yung corporation mismo ang ang bumili ng stocks na yon. Pwede yung corporation mismo ang mag-acquire ng stocks na yun. Pwede siya mag-bid dun sa delinquent stock na yun. Pag kinuha ng corporation yon, magiging treasury shares yon, class. Alright? So, sabihin na-issue na siya sa stockholder, tapos bumalik sa corporation. So, usually, binayaran niya ng corporation. Ngayon, class, ano gagawin ng Bakit gagawin ng corporation yon, class? Bakit ang corporation magtatabi ng treasury shares? Kasi itong treasury shares, pwede na ibenta in the future. Alright? Lalo na pagtingin niya, going strong naman yung corporation, pwede na ibenta yan at a later date. Alright? So, yun ang treasury shares, no? Na-issue na yan, tapos bumalik sa corporation. Hindi siya babalik sa unissued shares. Hindi siya babalik sa bilang ng unissued shares. Alright? It's a separate classification altogether. Ang tawag sa kanya, treasury shares. So the corporation, in the absence of a qualified bidder, may bid at the public sale of delinquent shares entitled to the shares purchased shall be vested in the corporation as treasury shares. Right? Treasury shares do not revert to the unissued shares of the corporation, but are regarded as property acquired by the corporation, which may be reissued or resold by the corporation. So class, parang ibebenta siya ulit ng corporation. Treasury shares have no voting rights as long as they remain in the treasury. They cannot vote. Bakit hindi pwede mag-vote, class? Kasi hawak siya ng corporation eh. So yung shares niya, kahit issued siya, hindi siya pwede bumoto kasi hawak siya ng corporation. Wala rin siyang dividends, class. Bakit siya walang dividends? Kasi hawak siya ng corporation, di ba? Kasi bakit magde-declare pa ng dividends sa corporation sa sarili niya? It's like you are paying yourself. That is absurd. All right? So let's end here today. Have a good day, class.